And now for the Black Firehouse Podcast, the only Ghostbusters podcast that discusses props, costumes, sets, and special effects, with your hosts, Austin Young and Dan Harshman.
You know, it's just occurred to me we really haven't had a completely successful test of this equipment.
I blame myself.
So do I. Let's get ready. Switch me on.
Hey everybody, this is Dan Harshman with Black Firehouse Podcast, as always here for episode 2 with my partner in crime, Mr. Austin Young.
Hello, hello.
How are you doing today, Austin?
I'm fantastic.
I am so excited to be here. We're doing episode 2, which I'm really excited about. We've had a lot of really good feedback on episode 1, which I know has me really jazzed to talk more about the Ghostbusters 1 costumes. How about you? Are you getting a lot of good feedback?
Oh yeah, it's been really great. I'm really happy to see it.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things, it's such a niche kind of podcast, as you would say. We're not as super cool multimedia as say our friends over at Yes Have Some, or even, grassroots nerddom like our good pals over at Bama Geeks, or even just straight Ghostbusters, like Interdimensional Cross Rip. But we love all those guys, and we're really, really happy for their support. I know I've gotten a lot of support from them, and they're all super awesome people, and you should check out all of their podcasts if you haven't, just for some really, really exceptional pop culture content, nerd content, and of course Ghostbusters content. But as always, we're going to keep it prop related here at the Black Firehouse Podcast. So interesting things going on in the prop community. Austin, I know you shared some videos today to our Facebook page. Anything that was incredibly interesting for you?
Yeah, Tested dropped that the new video today with the costume designer Danny Glicker, and it was a cool video. It was insightful. They took Adam through a tour of the wardrobe trailer and took a pretty in-depth look at the Afterlife uniforms and kind of the process that they went through to recreate them and the links that they went through to try and make sure that it was as accurate as possible, which really made me happy. I don't know about you, but
I mean, yeah, that definitely made me happy. I think it was definitely, well, it was one of the stronger tested videos, coming up to the release of Afterlife. I was really hooked on everything that Adam Savage was releasing, and I always love his content. He's such an energetic guy, and he's so cool and creative. He's kind of like, that maker idol.
yeah,
But I have to say, I was really disappointed with his bit on the Ecto.
yeah,
Because it was mostly like, we're going to show shots of Adam Savage's face and how much fun he's having driving the Ecto.
yeah, and
I was like, okay.
I
I get it.
Yeah, I get it too. Like I was really hoping, we'll do a part 2. We'll take us inside. We'll look at the interior, and we'll look at the trap door and the gunner seat. And so far, nothing.
Nothing.
It's like,
Hey,
okay,
these were the lengths we went to replicate everything on the existing Ecto 1. This is where we found this. This is how we did that. And they're like, nope. But you want to take it around a few laps? Okay. But still, really, really cool series of videos, and I'm hoping that those are going to be included on the Ultimate Edition of Ghostbusters 1, 2, and Afterlife coming out next month.
Yeah, and I noticed the little title card at the end of this one it's now switched over to Ghostbusters Afterlife on digital and Blu-ray disc, February 1st. And so I'm hoping that means leading up to the release, we're still going to get a few more of these videos. I kind of figured that they were going to come to a stop after the last one.
I was super surprised that they still released them. So hopefully that's kind of their warm up for the home release.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that they're actually on the DVDs, just because it's one of those cool things that I would like to be able to watch them on large format, in 4K or whatever,
pause
on my television. Pause,
frame by frame.
The stuff that we really need to pull from those videos, though. Man, his release of something like the 150 some odd photos of the Phoebe Hero pack, that was a gift. um,
Oh yeah, I mean,
a couple months ago.
to,
That was an incredible gift to the community.
being able to have that sort of inside access to things like high resolution, detailed photos, all sorts of different angles, even some measurements. A few
Hmm.
measurements included. I
Well,
mean,
enough
un-
measurements to extrapolate whatever we needed out of it.
yeah,
You don't need everything to have a yardstick next to it, but he knows, and I really liked that he ended up being responsible for that project because he knows the little details that we're looking for. So he knows those little weird angles that we want to see on the pack, and he showed those to us, and it
yeah.
really just it was so cool. That was really really awesome. Not only of Adam Savage, but of course of Ghost Core to allow him to release that kind of information.
Well, that and I mean, it's stuff we would have killed for 20 years ago. I mean, there's
Oh yeah,
not having
it's
to
stuff
photo.
we'd kill for today.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, not having to stand, behind a piece of glass and shoot a laser pointer into the display and take photos and extrapolate measurements and things that way. Like how
What you
far it's come.
don't want to extrapolate measurements of an entire pack based on known measurements of a clippered valve?
I mean, I wouldn't not do it if I was forced to, but
I
it's
wouldn't.
much easier
So
just to
I was like, you
have
know
a
what?
tape measure present.
Lightsabers are easier. I'm out.
Yeah,
Gosh. So did you see the new prop announcement from fun.com?
I did. Yes.
Yeah.
It's
Can we talk about it?
yeah, we can
Okay.
talk about it.
So all right, I want to preface this. I want to say I have an incredible amount of respect for the spirit modders. I don't know if you've spent any time in the spirit modification forums on Facebook.
I
There
have.
are some very, very, very creative, very talented individuals there that are doing some really, really awesome things. And I love the Spirit Proton Pack for what it is. I
Yeah.
love that it is a basically it's a gateway drug, to
Mhm.
Ghostbusters building. I like that, if you want to just get a taste for wearing a proton pack, that you don't have to break the bank. You can spend less than $100 and get a proton pack that looks the part and throw it on your back and have fun. And if you want to keep delving into it, you can add on to it. And at some point you may even say, hey, you know what, this is no longer enough. I want to get into, building off of a shell or a 3D print or something like that. I i like the spirit pack for that. But fun.com has announced a new pack, with no details but photos, and a lot of the photos show it using um, features from the Spirit Proton Pack, like um, elbows and stuff like that. All seem to be constructed very, very similarly to what is on the Spirit Proton Pack.
Yeah.
And but it seems to be, maybe it would be more full size, but it is still very much in that realm of the same quality as Spirit. So I would think for something like that, even at full size, but same realm of quality, I'm thinking maybe, okay, it's going to be $150, maybe $200,
Yeah.
$500.
Yeah, I don't get it at all.
I'm $500. It was like there was a group of people in a room designing product based on their licenses, and they're like, hey, how can we make sure that absolutely no one buys this? And
Or
they're like, let's charge $500 for a deluxe Spirit Proton Pack, because that's half the appeal. That's more than half the appeal of the Spirit Proton Pack. Because if you just want a Proton Pack, it looks fine on a wall, and it's
yeah.
$100 or less. That's great. $500. That's $100 more than the Hasbro pack, and 500% less features.
Yes. See, that's my maybe that's what I was thinking is they're all sitting around in a room. They're like, "Hey, did you see how much Hasbro's getting for that pack? We could charge $100 extra. People would buy it."
They're all from Long Island. I mean, yeah, I
Exactly.
guess, yeah, they have to be. to come up with something so horrid. I was disappointed. Like, it's
Yeah.
one of those things. I've never wanted to look down on other people because everybody's always at different levels, coming into the hobby where they want to be at the hobby, what they want out of the hobby,
Yeah.
what brings them joy. I've, always been careful not to be like, oh, well, your stuff is lesser than mine. It's not. It's just different than mine.
Yeah.
Uh, but if you spend $500 on that, I'm gonna make fun of you.
I mean,
it's
the
it's
sad part is somebody is going to buy it because they are uninformed, uneducated.
I well,
And, you know, that's what sucks about it.
I
Someone
hope,
will buy it.
yeah, yeah. I just, oh man, I'm gonna need a lot of 20% off coupons to really justify that one.
Can you stack coupons at Spirit
Can you stack
or
like?
Fun?
Can I do? Can I do four of them? Can I get 90% off for
Maybe
this,
the
please?
extra $100. It looks like it has a mock Alice frame on it. Maybe that's where the extra $100 comes in.
Oh gosh, well,
Because the
everybody
Hasbro
keeps
doesn't
talking.
have that.
No, the Hasbro doesn't have that, but everybody keep. Oh, it has a frame. It has a frame. I'm like, guys, look at the quality of what's going on there. I mean, this is going to be lighter than light plastic. Like, you remember the the tube frames that you used to put together to make your tents in your bedroom, like the
Oh
Teenage
yeah.
Mutant Ninja Turtles tents and stuff, and like
Oh
those would
yeah.
break. This stuff is going to be made out of plastic, less robust than that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is not a good thing, guys, that it has an Alice frame on it. And
Hey, but
I'm
the wand looks okay.
no, it doesn't.
I
Everything's
mean,
stickers. The half moons were orange.
yeah, but I mean, just
It says slow bowl.
does it really?
It says slow bowl.
Hold
It
on,
doesn't even say slow blow. It,
hold
it
on.
says slow bowl. Are you looking?
Oh my god, it does say that. That's incredible.
I need my slow bowl fuse sticker.
Wow.
We'll get we'll get AJ to release special edition slow bowl stickers.
Yes, please, AJ, if you're listening, get on that ASAP.
Need you to redo the entire decal set to include slow bowl.
I hope it stays like that. I hope they don't fix it.
I we'll see. Oh gosh. So yeah, that's what's kind of going on today in the world of Ghostbusters props. So I think we'll go ahead. Let's keep this moving on. You wanna go into what's on our workbench?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
What is that thing you're doing?
It's technical. It's one of our little toys.
The proton tag is not a toy.
I guess that's right.
Austin, what's on your workbench?
Well, same thing as last time,
Oh
but
crap!
I did get a metal ion arm in from AJ the other day, and I spent
Oh.
a while grinding the welds off because I'm doing an afterlife pack with it. So that was fun.
You're doing an afterlife pack with metal accessories.
Yes, sir.
Why?
Because I can.
That's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. I've been tossing that around as far as so I don't think I'm going to do a Phoebe pack. I think when I finally get around to an afterlife pack, I want to do one of the original Ghostbuster packs, which of course is pretty much just a Ghostbusters 2 pack, but it has the two additional underside switches and the flex fittings
Yeah.
where the split loom would be. I think that's going to be something more appealing for my collection.
Yeah.
I'll still collect the parts for the Phoebe packs. But
Well, and those packs too are really interesting because they've got a lot of additional weathering on them, or I should
in
say they have weathering as opposed to the originals.
and unique weathering too.
Yeah.
So they're not like in Ghostbusters 2 where the packs were weathered because they just, threw the Ghostbusters 1 packs in a storage closet somewhere
Yeah,
for
they didn't
5
care.
years. they intentionally weathered them with a lot of silver, so there's a lot more implications actually on a lot of the props for Ghostbusters Afterlife. A lot of implications of props being metal, like
Yeah.
silver weathering on the PKE meter, which
Hmm.
I don't know how I feel about that. Like I always liked the idea of even maybe Egon having made his PKE meter out of a shoe polisher. That just
Yeah.
seems so Egon. Um,
I
but I guess
mean,
it's metal now.
I mean, I get from a visual standpoint, it's more interesting.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't mind it. I mean, when we first started getting a glimpse of the Afterlife packs or the Phoebe pack specifically, I remember kind of groaning and going, "Oh my god, silver dry brush weathering! Like, really, we're doing this?" Simply because I have no problem with silver weathering on a proton pack as long as it's not overdone, which is something that people tend to do a lot. They go
Right.
over every single edge, every high spot, even in places that make no sense, like that would never come in contact with another surface. It's weathered,
Right. Yeah,
And
but these guys are professionals. I mean, this is not
well, and the thing is,
they're not attacking these things with silver sharpies. They're
no, the weathering that we were seeing early on was, trailer screen grabs and things like that. And
right.
those packs have a texture to them that's different from the originals. They almost have a
Yes.
like a cast iron texture.
Yes.
And so, having not been aware of that early on, it seemed like it was just kind of sloppily applied, with a paintbrush, and there wasn't really any rhyme or reason to it. It was just sort of randomized, right?
Hmm.
But I've gotten used to it, and now that we've gotten these better looks at the packs, the tested photos and things like that, it's more aware that more thought went into it.
I very much enjoyed the weathering that Afterlife has committed to. I've always
Yeah,
been a big fan. My favorite version of the Ecto one is at the beginning of Ghostbusters 2, where
yeah,
it's backfiring and it has that grime and gross on it. Now Afterlife, of course, they were communicating a much longer age gap there, so there's a lot
yeah,
more to it. But overall, all their props were still they were beat up, they were worn and used looking, um, but still really serviceable. I'm not sold on the amount of duct tape that they used, but
yeah.
I think when I put together my RTV remote, I might be leaving out the the gracious application of duct
You're
tape on the
making
corner.
an as first built by version.
Yes, as first built by Egon before he dropped it half a dozen times. Yes.
Yeah, dropped it out of the Ecto while it was running and ran over it.
Backwards and forwards.
Yes. But no,
Uh,
so the weathering, I've gotten used to it, and I've actually come to really appreciate it. I like it a lot, and I like you said, the story it's telling. That
no, the props they're beautiful.
yeah,
They really are. The art book, I don't know if you've gotten a chance to pick it up or look through it.
yeah, I have.
Um, there's a lot of unused concepts in there that I think were stronger for the story that they were trying to tell. Um, but at the end of the day, I can only complain so much because I
Yeah,
think my biggest fear for any Ghostbusters follow up was always going to be, are we going to get iPhone proton packs?
yeah,
And I've always seen the props as being pieces of industrial machinery.
yeah,
A soil scoop has not really changed over the past 50 years, and
yeah,
I never thought the proton pack should either. They're not cell phones, they're not electronics, they are industrial machines, and I love that I got my wish, which was to see a proton pack on the big screen like that again, which
yeah.
was just, yeah, that
I
was
mean,
wonderful.
and we've dodged that bullet twice now. Like we've had two movies where they're still thrown together pieces of junk. They're not
Yeah,
highly polished, sterile,
very
props.
true. Very, very true. Yeah, the prop design for Answer the Call was solid. It was
Hmm.
very, very well done. Very well thought out. I know not everybody really likes the redesigns, but if you take them for what they are, you take everything else that you thought about that movie away and really just look at it as the pure aesthetics of, does this look like it could bust ghosts? Does this look like it matches the ethos of a proton pack? I would have to say, yeah, 100%. Looks
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
So I'm working on Spengler's 1984 Workbench. that's that is that's been my project this week.
Building a new workbench, are you?
Yeah, it's a new workbench with blackjack and hookers. No, it's we have had a wonderful growing community, just an absolutely wonderful growing community, especially Ben Eady, the props master for the on-set filming of Ghostbusters Afterlife, has been throwing us a lot of shout outs, and word is just spreading that there is this community of really, really detail obsessive Ghostbuster geeks. And what's setting the workbench apart is that we're uh, we're strict on the rules. It's just we're trying to fill in the same niche that the Black Firehouse podcast is we're here for the details. That's what we really love about the franchise. The
Yeah.
investigation, the debate, the argument, the respective argument, I should say. And so we've gotten a lot of new people and a lot of really fantastic people, but it's finding that balance. We only have, aside from myself, two moderators, and trying to find the balance of how do we filter out and give people the chance to get the feel for what this part of the community is about. And is definitely not a gatekeeping elitist, nobody's supposed to be here, He-Man Woman Haters Club. It's just that we as a community get a particular appreciation out of the details of Ghostbusters props and costumes, and that has caught on really, really well. It's had a few hiccups, it's had a few bumps, but that's what happens when you have 1.5 thousand people.
Yeah.
But we've set it up right now where we're trying out post approvals just to kind of trim back on that fat, and we'll probably bring in another moderator or so. But um, this is also kind of serving as a large plug, of course, for the Spengler's 1984 Workbench, which is the discussion forum for the Black Firehouse podcast. But it's a great community.
Yeah.
Um, we already started delving into the uniform plugs on the Afterlife uniforms, and man, I mean, I saw it and said, hey, I think this is really a cool idea to have a leg hose plug, so when you're
Yeah.
not using the leg hose. And like, I think 30 minutes later, two or three different people had new concepts that they had already designed in 3D modeling programs,
Hmm.
and up close shots showing that, hey, it looks like the leg hose adapters for this were 3D printed and molded. I mean, like, that to me is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, that is what the community there is about. And of course, then just some still really fantastic builds, from everything from Nikita battery holders for Ghostbusters 2 semi-hero packs, and another fantastic build on a semi-hero, I'm sorry, not semi-hero, stunt Ghostbusters trap, which is
Yeah.
also looking beautiful. And that's just today. And like, that's the kind of content that we're really looking for there. Obviously everybody is welcome, but you still have to play by our rules to play in our sandbox.
I mean, and you know what? If that's not your jam, if you're not
Oh
into
yeah,
highly specific detail, then I mean, that's fine too.
that's
Uh,
okay. There are so many amazing groups out there. The Spirit Proton Pack builders I talked about. There's groups popping up for people who are just doing modifications on the Hasbro stuff, 3D printed Ghostbuster props.
yeah.
They do some amazing work over there.
Oh yeah.
Um, Ben of Kent has his own forum. Lots of really good happenings there. A lot of his kit builds and stuff are going out there. I think Aaron Mack even has a forum that I don't think was started by Aaron Mack, but that's
Yeah.
hey, that's not my horse, not my race. But
A new one I just saw pop up. There's an RTV builders group that just popped up
is there?
recently, and
Oh,
I
wonderful.
joined it a couple of days ago, and there's some really awesome stuff going on in there. I mean,
There is.
crazy accurate stuff going on.
that I'm gonna have to check that out because you've got me hooked on the wanting to do the RTV build, so that would be
Yeah, it's really cool. I can't remember the guy's name, but he posted some progress shots today, and of his, it's mostly 3D printed. But I mean, dude, it's spot on.
well. I
It's
think the
fantastic.
real ones were. I mean,
Yeah,
you had the Traxxas chassis and wheels and stuff, but for the most part, the trap, everything from the what was actually radio controlled up was all 3D printed, from what I understand.
that's how it appears. I mean, aside from maybe the side plates, everything else
Yeah.
looks 3D printed, and maybe the handles. I think they might be actual aluminum, but yeah.
Okay. Very interesting. Well, that's awesome. So, um, that's what I got on my workbench. That's my plugin for today. I guess we should get to it. We're talking about Ghostbusters 1 uniforms. You ready to do this?
Oh well, yeah, baby, let's go.
Let's go.
Listen. You smell something?
There's something very important I forgot to tell you.
What?
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.
Why?
So, Austin, last time we were talking about the Ghostbusters 1 jumpsuits and patches, and we got pretty good into that. We talked about the Todd Cook V3. I am
Hmm.
super happy to follow up with that. By the way, I spoke with Todd Cook today, actually, and he is working with a owner of a Ghostbusters 2 hero jumpsuit to bring his version of the Ghostbusters 2 patch to market.
Awesome.
So that is super exciting. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And then we spoke about the flight suits, but you had some stuff that you wanted to revisit on that. So lay it out, man.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the Spengler group, there was a post made a couple of days ago regarding the name tags, specifically the Calgary name tags.
Yeah, which are great, I think.
Yeah, they the issue was brought up that apparently they'd ordered one, received one. I won't go into details, but a replacement ended up
Being
being
different.
issued,
It was different.
and it was different. It was smaller,
Right.
and I ended up getting into a couple of discussions with people through Messenger that night over the name tags and things, and just kind of the nuances of the different versions. And there's apparently a Novos put out name tags, which I don't even remember a Novos putting out name tags. I knew they put out a logo patch.
They did it, and it does not stand up right now.
Yeah. The a Novos patch, though, looks like they've tried to implement kind of the wonky, wavy letters, the font,
Mhm.
right? But it's very manufactured. It's got kind of a stair-step quality to it.
Okay.
And so I kind of wanted to talk about that, I guess, briefly.
Sure.
Just kind of what do we have? I don't think we have any solid confirmation as to whether or not they were hand stitched or machine embroidered.
Well, we can look at the ever wonderful Ghostbusters reference library, but I don't think that's going to really bring us the confirmation that we would need. I know what you're talking about. And it does. It has that hand stitched quality when you're looking at the names, but they're so exact. I'm
Well,
going to err on the side that they were machine done, but 1980s.
I kind of tend to agree because it led me down a rabbit hole, because honestly it's not something I've ever thought to research too much. But it led me down a rabbit hole. I started looking at like period embroidered patches.
Sure.
From the 70s, from the 80s. And most of the text and things like that, they're not that great.
Mm-mm.
It's not very symmetrical. It's very wavy. It's very wonky. And I looked at too many examples for it to just be coincidence, So I feel like they're probably, and if you look at the font and you look at the stitch pattern, you have some stitches that are off, that are wonky, but for the most part, they're pretty in line with each other.
Yeah.
They follow each other fairly well, more than I would think hand stitching would accomplish.
That and the spacing between the letters. I think that's called the kerning. It's been a long time
Yeah,
since I've
yeah,
done typeface studies,
yeah,
but the kerning on the screen used ones is much tighter than anything that is available on the market.
yeah. Well, and the letters themselves, they're different on each jumpsuit. Like, not all the S's look exactly the same.
Right.
And so that's something that kind of leads me towards, okay, well, are they hand stitched? I don't know enough about vintage embroidery machining to know, how accurate and precise they were when you did repeats.
Right. Yeah, I that is something that is outside of my expertise. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed my conversation with Todd so much was because I mean,
Mhm.
he really researched patches and that was
Yeah.
super awesome.
Well, and I also went back to the logo patches
Hmm.
and started looking, and they seem a lot more precise than I guess I had really remembered.
Yeah.
And I definitely agree that those are probably machine embroidered.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, they're not perfect, but they are more uniform than I think a lot of people give them credit for.
Absolutely.
So, and then the other thing that I kind of picked up on is we talked about the small section of white embroidering on the thumb,
Hmm.
and I knew I've known forever that it's there on the stance pack or patch rather, but I went back and looked, and it's present on all of them,
Hmm. It is, which is
and I thought that was really
it's a
interesting.
weird thing. My guess, my normal run of the mill guess is that they said, okay, we're going to try and embroider this whole thing as white, and then somebody said, hey, this is stupid. We already have an off white background. Or a white background. Let's just go with that. Um, but why that is on four of them, I don't know, unless the machine was literally embroidering four of the patches at the same time, which is a possibility.
So my thought is maybe all the patches got embroidered, and for whatever reason, the red bled over into that area of the thumb, or something went
Oh, and they
wrong, and
went
so
and they
they had to go
fixed
in
it.
and they went in and fixed it by hand, or even possibly by machine. I don't know if it was
Interesting.
possible to do something like that back then, but
Pure conjecture.
exactly.
Pure
Well, and
conjecture.
the video of the tested video today, Danny Glicker talks about that little spot on the patch,
Really?
which, yeah, in fact, I wasn't even aware that they were on the Afterlife patch. I hadn't looked that closely. I assumed it was just the white background of the rest of it.
Hmm.
But he refers to it as a repair.
Interesting. Okay.
So, but why all four of them would need repairing, I don't know. So that's kind of why I think it might have just been a mistake on the embroideries machine. Like
Like maybe that's why
something they just,
the maybe the thumbs weren't embroidered over,
yeah.
and
I
they had
mean,
to go in and
who
add those
knows?
thumbs. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Oh no, I'm glad you brought that up. That definitely raises some interesting points about the pieces and just a little bit more intrigue and also a little bit more how we still don't know everything there is to know. We know a lot. Um, but every day is something new, which is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, we're never going to know everything.
No, not
You
until
know,
we get
the,
that time machine up and running.
right. It's crazy to me that we still don't really know anybody that built the proton packs.
No, we know. Oh,
You know,
and unfortunately, the main source of that would have been Stephen Dane is no longer with us, which is a real shame. I think out of
yeah,
everybody involved with Ghostbusters, directors, actors, I'm grateful to have met so many of them, but that's the man I really would have loved to have had just a lunch
yeah,
with, just to be like, lay it on me, man. you know.
yeah, exactly.
Well, very.
And then one other thing I wanted to touch
Hmm.
on the uniforms themselves
Sure.
that I meant to mention in the last episode. Um, there's a really odd detail on one of the stance suits that I feel like, not that we don't already know this, but just more evidence for the pile, I
Hmm.
suppose. I feel like this is probably more confirmation that they're custom made.
You needed more confirmation that they were custom made.
It's just a little thing that I want to bring up.
Okay.
So there was a stance suit that was auctioned off years ago. I think mid 2000s.
Hmm.
If I remember right, it was on eBay, and I don't remember. Maybe it was an auction site, like Profiles or something like that. But
Okay.
the left hand, the little the tab, the Velcro tab on the wrist,
Hmm.
it's sewed on backwards.
Really?
So instead of being on like the inside seam of the arm, where it would be facing out away from the sleeve, it's sewn on the inside sleeve, the back sleeve or the back seam, and it's facing towards the front of you.
Interesting.
Now, that's certainly a mistake that can happen from a factory. I just feel like it might be more likely to be a mistake that just wasn't caught by, a wardrobe department.
Definitely. You have me interested. I'm trying to see if the reference library has a capture of that particular image.
It does. I don't. I should have prepared and had it pulled up
How
to
dare.
send you sooner. I'm sorry, but no, I just thought
That
it's
is
interesting.
interesting.
Now, I'm almost positive that's what it is. I mean, it could be a trick of the light. I don't know, but it looks like it's sewn on backwards.
I'll have to check
And
that
the
out.
only thing is, I've never been able to find it in the movie.
Well, hopefully
So I don't
somebody
know.
will be able to chime in and tell you how wrong you are.
Well, probably. I'm sure they will at some point.
And it's okay to be wrong.
It is. That's the thing about all of this discussion we go through is we have our opinions. We feel very strongly about some of them. But dude, I will happily eat crow if I'm proven wrong. Like,
That's fair.
lay it on me, because for me it's not about being right. It's about being accurate,
Well, yeah. So, for me, it's about being right. So I'm gonna go get my shovel and I'm gonna dig up Casey Kasem. And I'm gonna be like, "Listen, what'd you say?"
Good luck with that.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, excellent. So definitely some interesting details. I'm gonna have to look into more on the stance cuff because I'm not. There's nothing jumping off the page at me right now with the stance uniforms that are available in the reference library. So we'll definitely have to take a look at that. Maybe that's something we can revisit again next episode. But today, moving on from jumpsuits and patches, before we spend another hour on jumpsuits and patches, we're talking about
Yes.
belts, boots, and elbow pads.
Yes, we are.
And that's it. That's it. That's the whole topic. Congratulations, everybody. Have a great
Thanks,
night.
everybody.
Thanks for tuning in. So I'm looking at the belts, and for the longest time. So first things first, the Ghostbuster belts. They are based off of the M1956 military issue pistol belt. Very, very similar to the M1936 pistol belt. The biggest difference here between the 36 and the 56 being the keeper snap.
Yeah.
And before Vietnam, there was a small individual first aid pouch that was issued to soldiers that had a small snap button clasp, and it would sit at the front of your belt, and it had enough space for one bandage, and that's what you would put in there. Or some people would use it as a compass pouch later on as well. But that's the big primary difference between them. The other thing, though, is these belts are not off the rack.
Yeah.
They are custom made pieces. And one of the things I definitely want to stress when we're coming up to Hollywood and wardrobe is that weird things like belts and flight suits tend to get custom made. Um, when you do
Yeah.
have things that are off the rack, it ends up actually being more unusual, and that would be things like maybe Venkman's LL Bean orange shirt that he wears at the Lincoln Center.
Yeah.
And it
And
go on.
well, and specifically things like something like a uniform is more likely to be custom made than something like off the rack clothing. I
Hmm.
mean, they make off the rack clothing all the time, don't get me wrong, but when it's something as important as like those Ghostbusters uniforms, there tends to be more attention and time given to it.
Hmm. And it looks like the Ghostbusters one belts in question were created by the studio of Fredericks out of New York, which I thought was interesting. And these come from, again, photos on the reference library, but originally these were Harold Ramis's belts, boots, and elbow pads that eventually made it into the collection of Peter Mosen before being sold off
Mm-hmm.
individually to other private collectors within the last, I think, 3 years or so is when he
Yeah.
finally offloaded those. And I was disappointed that I was not in a position to get any of them because they're really fantastic examples of the belts that they used in Ghostbusters, the stunt gizmos on there, of course, them replicating the Sanyo ICC 808D, and
Mm-hmm.
you know about the cousin though of the ICC 808, right?
Refresh my
That
memory.
is the Sanyo ICC 802D, which uses a almost identical circuit board and Nixie tubes, but instead of the error box, uses an error tube at the very end. And
Gotcha.
then even more
Okay.
interesting is the 808D. I know of at least, and there's probably more out there, variations of it in which the error box has a bundle of red wires coming out of it, which is what they use for the
Mm-hmm.
movie. Um, I have one that I own that has a bundle of green wires coming out of the error box running to the main board, and and then of course there's the digital variant of the 808D,
Yeah.
which, man, collectors beware.
Yeah.
When you're on eBay, there are people that will have absolutely no problem listing their calculator as a 808D Ghostbusters accurate, and you throw down your $500 or $600 on it, and come to find out it's the digital version of it.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I would be hesitant to buy any of them without a picture of it opened up.
I know when I bought mine, um, I had the seller verify with photos of the calculator that were dated with good lighting so that I could actually look and spot the Nixie tubes behind the screen before I committed to
Yeah.
buying it, because I did see one in that same period when I was searching where I was looking at the screen and there was a 802 board inside the 808, and I was just like, that's
Yeah.
not okay. 802s, you're really looking at, maybe $200 to $300 for those because they're really, really very, very close, great stand-ins.
Yeah.
But it's not the same.
And that matters. It matters a
It
lot.
matters a lot. It matters a lot. Have we ever been able to identify the daughter boards?
Not that I'm aware of.
Neither am I.
I mean, and Lord knows what they're out of. I mean, they could be little circuit boards that were in a bin at Apex,
Yeah.
for all we know.
Man, for anybody listening, Apex is a industrial electronics surplus warehouse in LA that the prop makers got most of the Greeblies from for Ghostbusters. And I still firmly believe that there's treasures to be found there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because the place is massive, but it has been also gone through very, very thoroughly. But everything from hat lights to heat sinks and everything in between came out of Apex Electronics. So that's definitely a dream place that I want a vacation to. I would go out to LA just so I could spend a few days digging through the boxes at Apex Electronics.
And then just go
It
home.
just, yeah,
Don't see
no,
anybody. Don't go sightseeing.
nope,
Just go dig at
I don't
Apex.
care.
I'm right there
Yeah.
with you, dude. That's what I want to do.
Yeah. I don't want to go and visit the firehouse and get shot.
Hey, we drove by in 2016 at night, no
Did
less.
anybody get
And
out of that car?
no, and we hesitated to roll the window down. But we did. I snapped a really quick blurry picture, and then we went on our merry way.
I think if I had the opportunity that I think it was the Denver Ghostbusters had way back in, I think, 2014, to actually go and tour the firehouse, I'd risk a stepping out of a car, but only if I could go immediately inside of the firehouse.
Man, dude, if I could be murdered and killed in the Ghostbusters firehouse, that's fine with
That
me,
can be
man.
arranged, man. Just hit a
But
brother up.
haul my dead body out in an Ecto-1.
We'll have to call Sean Bishop and get that arranged.
He's probably the closest with an Ecto.
I mean, not anymore. I think he's in Hawaii.
Damn it. Okay, well,
Listen, man, we will get your murder arranged pronto.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Welcome. So yeah, that belt gizmo, the Sanyo ICC 808D Nixie tube with the red wire coming out of the error box, which is unfortunately not something you can identify on the outside of the calculator. So you don't know which one you have until you popped it open. They're like really expensive Pokemon, and then they're just sitting in. What are your thoughts on the gizmo holster? You think that's a found piece that they chopped up?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a tape measure holder,
It
right?
does.
And it's entirely possible it is a tape measure holder. It's entirely possible they took a tape measure holder and made a pattern off of it.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of knowing the way they did things back then, and especially on this movie, I feel like it's probably off the rack. They modified it slightly and dyed it green. Dyed it black.
All right, well, you're fired off this
Yeah,
podcast.
they're really green.
They're really
they're overdyed green.
They're overdyed green. It's a trick of the light.
Yes. No, I think that they're probably off the rack tape measure holders or some kind of tool holder, but more than likely a tape measure holder.
So how do we get ourselves into the mindset of these props guys, of these costume departments from 1983 on things that are off the rack versus things that are custom made? I mean, I always feel so bad when you get a new person coming in and they're like, "Oh, that's just off the rack," because everything was off the rack, and you're like, no, not really. There was more that was custom built for this movie than was not. And they're like, "Oh, no, the proton pack was all just junk parts put together." It's like, no, they carved it out of foam.
Yeah.
So how do we tell?
For me, it's a hard.
It's very
thing.
hard.
You have to. First of all, you have to be super obsessive with detail, like us, I think, and have studied this stuff for so long to kind of even begin to kind of understand how it might have gone back then. Like, we know that it was a fairly rushed production.
It was a very short production, yes.
So you have to take that into account. Like, there's not going to be time to custom fabricate everything.
Well, right.
And things like,
but you have weird things like the belt gizmo holster, which seems so much more off the rack. It looks, surplus, off the rack tape measure holster, cut up, throw the belt gizmo in there, call it a day. But then you have things like the trap holster, which is so very evidently custom fabricated for the movie. And then things like a Maglite holster, which we've been able to find identical versions of still on the market today.
Yeah. See, I don't necessarily agree on the trap holster. I think the trap holster is probably also some piece of off the rack tool holder, something like that was modified. Especially if you look at the one that Venkman has got on.
Sure, that's usually the one that comes to mind first. So, like, walk me through this. Tell me your thought process.
I mean, there's clearly something stamped in it.
Right.
A logo or text or something. I don't see a prop department or a wardrobe department going through the trouble of stamping something into the leather that's going to get dyed black and supposedly never seen by anybody, right?
Right, except for
Um,
a bunch of nerds 35 years later.
yeah, but then there's a debate: were they backed with aluminum? Were they not? And honestly, I think there's a bunch of different versions.
Well, I definitely
I th-
there's a bunch of different versions because it gets even more complicated with Ghostbusters 2, where we have known copies of the trap holster that have details like aluminum backing, but then they have details like brackets on the side, and then you go back and you watch the movie, and those brackets just simply aren't there.
yeah, well, and the Ghostbusters 2 ones are clearly fabricated. Like those are custom made.
Right.
You know, it could be a situation where the originals were just too broken down, missing altogether, or beyond repair, so they had to fabricate new ones.
Hmm.
And and at that point, it was just easier to make new ones than it would be to try and figure out what they made them from originally, right?
Sure.
If they were off the
And
rack.
they had a larger budget.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you think about things like that, and nobody knows for sure except the people that were there.
Right. Time
Um,
machine. Time machine.
right? It's another reason we got to get to Apex.
Yeah. So we can find the horde of belt gizmo holsters that they have in the background.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I've gone down the rabbit hole of trying to find vintage period tape measure holders, and the problem with stuff like that is it just rarely pops up because people used them,
Oh, yeah.
and they wore out, they broke, they dried out and cracked and snapped, and people threw them away. The same thing with like all the Legree elbows.
Hmm.
That stuff wasn't meant to last forever. And if you're a surplus place, a lot of times you're pulling that shit off of stuff. It's cracked. Well, it's not any good. You throw it away.
Right. Well, even I'm looking at these photos. I'm looking at the measure holster, or the gizmo holster, and just even the rivets on the side are much thicker than anything
Yeah,
I think anyone has made, and even the gauge of the leather is thicker, I think, than what
heavy duty,
super
heavy
heavy duty.
duty. Which things are way cheaply made nowadays
Yeah,
compared to back then. So back then they probably were made to last,
yeah,
whereas nowadays they're just cranked out
with
and
those
disposable.
little flat head leather rivets that last only
Yeah,
for a few years. Interesting, interesting, interesting. And then of course, going back to the belts. We were talking about this a couple weeks ago. The general consensus for the longest time I felt was that the belts were gray. Um
yeah,
Obviously I have been really, really rethinking that and looking at, the Mosen's belt. Now people are kind of moving towards tan. I'm still not even convinced tan because they're just so damn old looking.
well, and that's another thing that you always have to take into account when looking at pictures of this screen use stuff is it's aged. It's almost 40 years old at this point.
Right.
um and different materials age differently. But like the belts for me, there's this thought process in my head that there's they're coordinated with the elbow pads.
Hmm.
So you've got gray elbow pads, you're gonna have a gray belt. And again, even like the uniforms, they certainly look gray a lot of times.
But it's
There's
a
a lot of times they look
it's a
tan.
very, very different shade of gray. When I look at
Yeah.
them, and again, this is heavily up for debate. When I look at them, I'm seeing natural cotton,
Hmm.
which is it's not white, it's not tan or khaki. It's a natural, it's
Yeah.
an off-white. It's not something as light as eggshell, not quite in that khaki realm yet. But when I look at the belt as it
Hmm.
stands now, to me it looks like severely aged natural cotton. But then buddies of ours like Matt Burkett make very good observations in which all the eyelets tend to have a lot of rust around them,
Yeah.
which would indicate that they were exposed to some severely undue moisture, which could have been
Yeah.
from a dye bath. And then it raises even more questions. I'm thinking, well, why did they dye these after they put the eyelets in them and not dye the whole thing so that they could make sure they were all uniform in appearance before cutting and adding the eyelets.
Sometimes things like that I think are probably easier to do after the fact because
Fair.
you never know how many you're going to have to make initially or whatever, and it's easier to cut them all and assemble them all and then dye them in one batch versus trying to dye this huge roll of cotton webbing.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little more manageable once they're assembled.
And then, of course, finally,
that's my thought process.
No, and I think that's definitely a fair thought process. I mean, it's definitely reasonable to assume that that's what they did. They wanted to make sure the belts fit before anything.
Yeah.
And then the most frustrating thing about it is, well, where do we find a belt like this now?
Yeah. The ones that AJ used to sell in the GB fan shop.
They were perfect.
10 years ago, I've still got, I think, 2 of them, and I don't even want to wear them. I just hoard them and protect them at all costs because I'm terrified something's going to happen to them and I won't be able to.
I still remember putting in an order for another 1 or 2 of them when he announced that the manufacturer was changing how they made them and that the new ones would not have the corded pattern in them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They're still technically the same belts and everything, but they don't use that corded cotton length anymore. And I'm like,
yeah,
that's the key though. That's the big difference between just a standard, flat canvas pistol belt and something that looks like it's part of the Ghostbusters uniform. But luckily I was able to get a few of those off of him. I've also found, for somebody that wants to put in a little bit more elbow grease, is you can find vintage versions of the belt for parade use. So they don't have eyelets, but you end up with a nice big length of untainted white cotton with the right pattern, and then you just simply go through and you add your eyelets there. As far as it being a surplus piece, absolutely not. The examples of the white M56 belts that I've been able to find, they have thicker eyelets on the center ring, which is where you would hang anything that has a hanger mechanism. But they're definitely not something that I've been able to find surplus wise. I've been searching for years and years and years. I can't tell you how many times I've spent a break at work sitting on eBay looking at, vintage military pistol belts or any variation of there.
Well, and see, that's the thing is, this is one of those situations where even if you're just trying to find something, comparable to the screen used, it's aftermarket. It's one of those rare exceptions where aftermarket is better than genuine military issue.
It is. It is, yeah. There was that one sweet spot, kind of like with the khaki uniforms, that Rothko really, really had something.
Yeah.
And then they changed it all. It just messed it up. I mean, they used to have really spot-on jumpsuits and really spot-on belts, and now they have yellow jumpsuits and belts that break if you look at them wrong, which is just a shame.
Yeah, I mean, we can get into it in another episode, but I think the Afterlife belts are probably Rothko.
I think the Afterlife belts are the gray Rothko belts. I don't even know.
Rothko, do they still make them in gray?
Yeah, I bought a few not too terribly long ago after I saw shots from Afterlife. So they're out there. They're getting harder and harder to find. But that particular shade of gray that they are looks almost identical. I mean, I would just need somebody to confirm it from the costume department.
Yeah. I mean, it's either that or they bought white ones and dyed them themselves.
Which it's also very possible the shade of gray that they have is as rich, I would say, as a custom dye job.
Yeah. But yeah, the screen use belts, going back to the aftermarket stuff, I've got 7 or 8 pistol belts, and every single one of them is a different color, dude.
Oh yeah.
Every single one of them. I've got all the way to the very gray, all the way down to, the belts that AJ sold and everything in between.
Super khaki ones,
I've even got one that's very similar looking to how the Mosin belt looks right now. It's kind of got more of that aged kind of yellow tinge to it. Which I have no way of dating any of these. I don't know when they were manufactured, but it makes me wonder, okay, well, is this one, you know, if we know they're custom made, but did they get uh their webbing from some kind of supplier that also supplied
Very possible.
aftermarkets?
Absolutely. And I did that. At
Yeah.
one point I was searching Alibaba, and came up with some really, really close uh, suppliers when I was trying to see if I
Yeah.
could just source a spool of nothing but
Hmm.
raw cotton webbing. But with nylon now, nobody's
Yeah.
really using it. You'll get fashion accessories, but generally that ends up being, 2 inches wide, which is 1 inch too short, I'm afraid, for the belts.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're out there. There are
Yeah.
great options that are out there. The Rothko white belts are still a really good solid option because a lot of people still have that appropriate pattern to the webbing itself. And if you're able to nab one of
Yeah.
those, that's a great one to do a very light. I mean, a very, very, very light dye job too to get to that nice off white, not quite
Hmm.
khaki, not quite gray, but somewhere in between, that's starting to come up on what the elbow pads were. um
Yeah. And I've experimented with some different dye baths and stuff, mixing. I tend to not ever use any of the gray dyes because they either tend to be too blue or too purple.
they do.
Um, and you have to neutralize it and all this other crap. And so I just tend to use black, like really diluted black,
Hmm.
and it's always consistent for me. And I've been experimenting with heavily diluted black with some of the RIT. I believe it's just called tan.
Okay.
I think it's just tan.
Interesting.
I've gotten some decent results with it, but again, it's all up for debate because in this lighting it leans gray, in this lighting it leans khaki. Sometimes they look too dark, sometimes they look too light. So it's just such a weird color to pin
Are
down.
we gonna get khaki crusaders for the belts, or is that just strictly jumpsuits?
The elbow pads are khaki too.
The elbow pads, actually, the whole everything is. The
Yeah.
dye on the gizmo holsters, the belt accessories, the boots, the whole shebang. It's all
The
various.
proton packs are painted satin khaki.
They're sepia proton packs.
Yeah.
So elbow pads.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. I always had it in my head. I had always seen the raw style of the volleyball knee pads, in which it had that big opening in the crook. What would be right behind your
Yeah.
knee or your elbow. And I always thought, oh well, it makes sense that they sewed on black patches of fabric to cover up that hole. But that doesn't seem to be the case.
Well, especially when you consider there's several shots in the movie where Venkman only has one black square on one elbow pad.
So, are they sewn on?
I don't know. To me, it looks like there are some versions that have some kind of sewn on patch, elastic, or some kind of fabric.
Right.
And then there's instances where they look like they're painted on.
And
I mean,
the Spengler ones, again from Pete Mosen's prior collection, shows the black patches, but they are not patches. It's almost exposed paint, or they painted on squares something. There was some kind of painting
yeah.
application going on there, in which it looks like there's a black patch on that part of the elbow pad, but there isn't.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think it's really up for debate that they just spray painted the elbow pads. Right?
Right.
I think we all pretty much agree because anybody that's tried to dye a set gray knows
No,
they just don't take dye very
they
well.
don't. You'll get some into the bubble, and it'll rough up the
But
bubble.
yeah,
And no, they were definitely hemmed down with scissors,
yes,
what's the hem stop kind of glue stuff that you would put on the edges, because when you look at them up close, they are rough looking
yeah.
pieces of costume, very
Well,
very rough.
and they're only made to last the duration of filming,
Sure.
so you know.
And but then you look at it and you're like, okay, so there's these big black patches, but I can't tell if it's something that the light is tricking my eye. Am I seeing stitch patterns there because I'm expecting to see stitch patterns there? Or are these big black squares just simply paint?
I'm ashamed, but I can't find the reference picture. I've been trying to find it for like 2
Oh
minutes.
no.
Yeah, I don't see it on the reference library.
So
But I mean, I know what you're talking about.
it's
To me, those pads they look painted.
well, they are.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't feel like. I wish I could think of the particular examples where it seemed like that they were like some kind of patch sewn on. And the thing too is it could be a situation where maybe they tried out a sewn on patch and it was too cumbersome, too tight, and so they took it off and they painted them on. We know that they were altering things, while filming the props or
Hmm.
filming the film. The yellow rod trap is a good example of that.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know. The biggest question for me is what brand were they?
Sure.
You know, they have such a, or they appear to have a much more unique, almost taller shape to the bubble
They are
than.
a much higher bubble than I think what Ghostbuster fans offers. Now that being said, I still think Ghostbuster fans offers the nicest replicas of the elbow pads on the market. Definitely
Oh yeah,
better than anything else that is out there. Um, and I'm almost ashamed to say it. I prefer my Ghostbuster fans ones over doing my own spray and dye and cut, just because they're really well made. They're really, really
oh
well made. AJ really just knocked it out of the park with that particular
yeah.
offering.
Well, and to be honest with you, I would. I mean, I'm still wearing some elbow pads that I've put together, and I think I mentioned last episode I got some elbow pads, years and years ago that I still wear. And the only reason I still wear them is because I didn't cut them and hem them. I fold them.
Hmm.
I've always folded them because I knew if I cut them, they're just going to fray to pieces.
I
And
actually still have my first set that I cut and dyed and painted, and I used fabric paint. The bubble's a little bit too dark on them, but my wife uses
yeah,
them, and I've been surprised at how well they have held up over the years.
do you remember what brand they were?
I actually don't remember off the top of my head, but I still have two or three in the package. I will try and remember to look that up for our next episode.
Because I will say that the best ones, that I've ever run across and ever used had been the Mark Warts,
Hmm.
um, which unfortunately they don't make anymore. Which I still have two new sets in the package that I've been hoarding
Ooh,
for the eventual, you know, uh, highly screen accurate, Ghostbusters 1 and Ghostbusters 2 full mannequin displays that I'll probably never do,
I'll
but
have to come and relieve you of some of your hoard.
after I've been murdered in that
Hey,
firehouse, you can take
hey,
whatever
man,
you want,
we're
dude.
arranging it. We're gonna make sure you are murdered. that would there. That's I go to jail because I murder one of my best friends over Ghostbuster
Okay,
props.
okay. But when you go to jail, you have to wear your Magnolia suit and you have to tuck a replica of the blueprints into your flight suit. And make sure they let you into that holding cell with a set of blueprints.
I finally got a set of those blueprints. we're going off topic, but we are going to do an episode on paper Ghostbusters props. I'm so happy I finally
Oh,
have a
absolutely.
set of those blueprints, and they're so nice that I'm going to order a second set just so I can fold them up and whip them out of my jumpsuit.
Yes, please. Every time, Dragon Con or whatever, we're all out to eat somewhere.
Just
You just come over, lean over that table, cold riveted girders
with cores,
with cores of pure
selenium.
selenium.
Oh,
Uh,
that was for our listeners. That has been like my dream costume. Like that for me, that is the Ghostbusters outfit right there. Is Ray Stantz in jail in a uniform, no belt, whipping those blueprints out of his jumpsuit and just flopping that down. And I've been telling Austin since like 2009 that that's the Ghostbusters costume I want. I'm so close now. I'm so close. I have everything starting to come together. Everything's starting to come
isn't it
together.
isn't it great that you can basically dress completely down to just your jumpsuit, like unzipped, and just be as lazy as you want, and you're still in
Oh,
costume.
you're still a
You're still
Ghostbuster.
technically,
You're still a Ghostbuster.
yeah.
Yeah, you can look like a
I
complete
love
schmuck.
it.
So boots,
Yes.
my favorite.
Actually, before we move on to
Okay, all
boots,
right. What you got?
I wanna backtrack a little bit on the elbow pads and talk about the different brands and stuff.
Yeah,
And ask you if you've ever gone into researching any like period elbow pads.
I have not. I'll be honest with you, Austin. When it comes to the elbow pads, I've been so mesmerized with the comfortability and the quality of the GB fans ones that I kind of just stopped. Um,
Gotcha.
I
For me, it's still a
It's
quest
still an ongoing
to
thing.
find it. To not, if I can't find the perfect elbow pad, at least attempting to replicate it
Sure.
in some fashion. As far as the stretched out taller bubble thing, Fernando, our good friend Fernando Hernandez,
Hmm.
came up with that method years ago that he posted on GB fans of just stitching a piece of elastic to the inside on the elastic band of the bubble, and it pulled it in tight enough just so it kind of elongated the bubble and
Hmm.
gave you almost an identical look to the GB1 pads. And he did that with Markwarts, I believe.
Interesting.
And
I'm gonna have to go back and look at that. He's such a clever creator and such a clever
dude,
builder.
he's the best, man. I love Fernando.
Not to be mixed up with Hernando Fernandez, his evil
I call,
doppelganger.
yeah, he's clean shaven
Yes.
and has terrible hair. The complete opposite of Fernando. But yeah, like that was a really great method, and I mean, it looks great. It looks spot on, and so that may be what I end up doing with my Markwarts, but
One of your Markwarts.
one of them.
Yeah.
Probably both because you need one for each arm.
All right. Well, one pair of your Markwarts.
Yes. But no, I've gone down the rabbit hole trying to find some period accurate elbow pads, and there's just I haven't ever really found anything. I even I thought, well, if they did use maybe some kind of Markwart pad, it's an earlier version of it.
Hmm.
And I haven't run across anything. And again, it's so hard to try and date things like this, especially if you find them used. And again, they got used. People tend to throw them away after time,
Yeah.
So unless you're lucky to run into some kind of new old stock.
Gym equipment isn't exactly something that people would hold on to after using for
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah.
Like, hey, what kind of jockstrap was Venkman wearing in 1983? Can we find a used one, please? Thank you. No?
I don't know, but we're going to find out.
And what shade of khaki, gray, green is it?
There's a tinge of yellow.
He was a heavy drinker.
Only in certain areas.
He was a heavy drinker.
Oh, boy.
It was a different time. It was a different time.
Yes, as it was. Anyway, yeah, I guess we can move on to boots. I want that mystery to be solved. They're clearly some kind of older version of those elbow pads.
Yeah. Well, how about all right? So with boots, though, how about mysteries that have been solved that people refuse to listen to?
Yeah, they're not Corcoran's.
They're not Carolinas.
Yeah.
They're built
I
rights.
yeah, and I will defer to you for most of this argument because
So,
I haven't done very much research on the boots, um, at all.
I have managed to firmly stumble into, by sheer dumb luck, Ghostbusters 1 and Ghostbusters 2 accurate boots. Um, Now the definitive identifier on these is actually the soles. And you can see the soles in both Ghostbusters 1 and Ghostbusters 2 have two very distinct green plugs in them. You can see it when the Ghostbusters are climbing out of the earthquake hole in front of um, 55 Central Park West. You can
Mhm.
see the green plugs there. And then, of course, when Ray is hanging over the river of slime, you can see the
Yeah.
double green plugs in there. And those are built right grease stop anti slip soles. And
Yeah.
they are not military issue.
Yeah.
One of the things is that Corcoran has had their zipper keepers on their boots for a very, very long time. Very, very
Mhm.
long time. And Carolina's, well, I got to be honest, I didn't do enough research to see if they did, but the sole patterns on jump boots are completely different.
Yeah.
Um, Now this if you want a good shot of what the sole on your Ghostbusters accurate boot should look like, you can find photos of the boots that I own over at Harsh Hobbies Incorporated on Facebook. And there is a photo album for the Built Right boots. And yeah, they're not Carolinas, they're not Corcorans. They look very, very similar, but
Yeah.
there's only so many styles and patterns of heavy duty boot, and this just happens to be a reinforced toe, which is very, very common
Mhm.
with work boots and motorcycle boots, and of course then um, combat boots. But they're unfortunately not Corcoran 995s. They're built rights 1983. They would have been brand new off the shelf, measured specifically for the actor, and that's essentially where the information stops. Your best luck is, of course, just searching on eBay for like, kind, and quality. I have a pair that look good for Ghostbusters 1 boots as well. Has the correct nickel side zipper. Ghostbusters 2 has brass zippers, those being
Mhm.
the two big differences, but they both share the same style sole, so same manufacturer likely in those boots that they went to, which again is Biltrite, built right, grease stopper, anti slip treads. And they're nice. I mean, they're good boots. Interestingly enough, I've had the same issues with both sets of my Ghostbuster 2 boots, in which the leather desperately wants to dry out. And I highly recommend lots of leather moisturizer on those things
Mhm.
if you're going to wear them. I would also even go so far as to, if you take really hot showers, this is an old school method for breaking in Doc Martens, but keep your boots in the bathroom with you so that your bathroom gets nice and hot and steamy, and that will actually moisturize the boots as well. I haven't had
Yeah.
much of a problem with that with my Ghostbuster 1 boots, which is odd, because they would tend to be older, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that is a mystery that people are still believing isn't solved, but actually has been for some time. And they are easier to find than I think people would gather.
Yeah.
They, I would say, pretty consistently pop up on eBay once or twice a month. Um,
Mhm.
so definitely something for people to look out. And I was able to find my size too. Now they run small. I'll definitely put that warning out there. 10 and a halfs are fitting more like nines, or my feet are also just getting fatter. That's also a possibility. But they're out there. It's just, you got to be vigilant about it, and keep that hunting and be prepared to fight for them. It's definitely not going to be something that's going to come cheap, but you are going to be getting something that is accurate within the same price point as a brand new pair of 995s.
Yeah.
So there it
Well,
is.
and
Those are boots.
the corcoran's are fine.
They are.
Again,
They can be modified to look great. And
yeah,
I'm not going to say, hey, don't get 995s, even though I believe what I have heard is that they're discontinuing the model, which is unfortunate.
yeah,
It seems every time Ghostbuster fans get interested in something, the model gets discontinued. Um, but if you can find them, it doesn't take a lot to bring them up to a passable snuff. You can, if you have an older pair, you can sand down the zippers to expose whatever metal's underneath, or you can use
yeah.
rub and buff on them. I always prefer rub and buff as far as any kind of work you're going to do on boot zippers, because you have a little bit more control over the color.
Hmm.
Whereas with jumpsuits, with jumpsuits, it can be kind of a crapshoot because you never really know what kind of metal you have underneath the paint job.
Yeah. Yeah, I always just take a razor blade and scrape off the zipper pulls and the zipper teeth just to kind of double check. Um, you know,
It's just,
occasionally you run into some that are they're just copper.
yeah.
There is some kind of really heavy duty copper plating under the black.
Hmm.
Um, which I guess is still better than those cast gray
Yeah.
zippers, but
I think the biggest thing though that annoys me with the 995s is that zipper keeper. Because even if you
yeah.
cut the zipper keeper off, you still have those big, ugly snaps just sitting there.
Well, I mean, and you can remove the snaps, and you can take a leather hole punch and punch out some plugs out of the cover itself, and just kind of stick in there and glue in place. It's not going to be perfectly seamless, but it's going to be better than
Well,
nothing.
that you bring that up, I wonder if you could, you put in the leather, you punch the leather out of the overflap, glue the punches into the holes, and then use some of that furniture leather repair over it
Yeah, I mean,
to
maybe I've
kind of
never
smooth it
tried it
out.
on those boots themselves,
Yeah,
but I've patched holes in leather before that way.
it's definitely not something I have to do because I have screen accurate boots, Austin.
I do too somewhere. They're two sizes too big. I say, hold on, I say that mine have been resold at some point, so I don't know for sure they're 100% accurate.
That
But
is actually my next quest, is finding the Built-Rite soles that are in good shape so I can resole my Ghostbusters 1 boots. My Ghostbusters 2 boots, and I have two sets of both. My Ghostbusters 2 boots are in pretty pristine condition, which is why I'm always worried about them cracking if I wear them, just because that leather it's dried out, definitely. Um,
yeah,
but the Ghostbusters 1
well,
boots, super safe to wear.
and I wore the boots that I have for a long time. Like I said, they're two sizes too big, but I found them randomly in a thrift store for $10
Oh man.
years ago, and I was like, yeah, I'm not passing these up. And at the time, they were like really rare. Like people barely anybody had really found any.
Right.
And I mean, it's still probably one of my most favorite, proud, wild finds.
That is an awesome
But
find. That is a good find.
um, because they're two sizes too big, obviously I put on like 3 or 4 pairs of socks with them, and just from wearing them over the years, they've eventually gotten to the point where the zippers misalign
Oh
a
no.
lot, and they come. So I've kind of retired them because I'm terrified of like doing further damage to them.
Oh no.
So now I've got some regular corcorans that don't have the zippers in the side that I wear just for, when I'm me.
Just you.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm feeling lazy, I have some slip-on boots, and then I just go for the Venkman look, and nobody knows the better.
Yeah. I need to go take these boots and have zippers put in because I fucking hate having to lace them up. I hate it, dude. It's such a pain in the ass.
It really, well, especially because I have jump boots in the same size that are just quick lace. So there's no
Yeah.
side zipper, and they actually fit much more comfortable around the calf.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know why. For some reason the calves on the zipper boots are much tighter, and I could not, for the life of me, tell you why. It's something with the cut or my fat legs. I don't know. There's something going on there. I'm not fitting them right.
Gonna have to get some custom made.
Yeah, get some 995s and a hole punch and some glue.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, listen, we're about at the end of our hour and a half. It looks like we're going to be going steady for an hour and a half, Austin, which I'm actually okay with. Consistency being key here.
Yeah,
But we've
I'm good with it too.
we've revisited patches. We revisited Ghostbusters 1 jumpsuits, and we've talked about belts, boots, and elbow pads. Was there anything else you wanted to chat about with before we wrap it up for today?
Not really. I think that pretty much covers it. We haven't really solved anything yet, but we've opened up the discussion gates, I suppose.
Well, that's what it's about. And of course, if you want to join the
Yeah.
discussion, feel free to join us on Spangler's 1984 Workbench on Facebook.com. Be sure to like us on Spotify and on Instagram. Austin, are we on Twitter?
We are on Twitter.
So like us on Twitter, and from what I understand, once I get some audio files over to you, we'll also be on YouTube. So make sure you like us on all those platforms there. Guys, give us a nice review back, 5 stars if you like us very, very much. 1 star if you hate us, or don't. I don't care. But this is Dan Harshman and my buddy
Austin Young
for the Black Firehouse podcast. Wishing you all a very wonderful evening, and hey, go out there and build something.
As a duly designated representative of the city, I order you to cease any and all supernatural activity and return forthwith to your place of origin or to the nearest convenient parallel dimension.
Okay, so I'll see you later, huh? I'll give you a call.
Everything was fine with our system until the power grid was shut off by Dickless here.
2 in the box.
Ready to go.
We be fast and
Big explodes.
Ray has gone bye-bye, you gun. What have you got left?
for whatever reasons, Ray, call it fate, call it luck, call it karma. I believe that everything happens for a reason. I believe that we were destined to get thrown out of this dome. For what purpose? To go into business for ourselves.
Boy, the superintendent's gonna be pissed.
We're ready to believe you.